In the unforgiving heartland, where fortunes are built on grit and destroyed by greed, a new legend is about to be told. There are truths that only reveal themselves when everything we know falls apart. Before the harvest begins, offer your tribute. If you believe in the triumph of the underdog, show your support with a like. Join our community by subscribing so you won't miss the secrets buried in the land. Now prepare yourselves for a truth that echoes deeper than any profit margin. The silence was louder than the slap itself. It hung, thick and suffocating, in the sterile air of the Cole Agro Holdings reception, a corporate facility designed for efficiency, not human drama. A raw, stinging red mark blossomed on Ethan Cole's left cheek, a vibrant stain against the pallor of his skin, a stark counterpoint to the pallor of his exhaustion. His hat, knocked askew, hung precariously, a symbol of his current disarray, a testament to the sudden, violent jolt that had just rattled his world. Around them, the murmuring ceased, a collective intake of breath frozen in the opulent space. Files paused midair, coffee cups frozen, conversations aborted as if time itself had been snapped in two. Workers, farmers, and even a few suit-clad executives stared, their faces a mixture of shock and morbid fascination, a collective gasp caught in their throats. Victor Langford, the CEO, his hand still slightly raised, chest heaving with an indignation that seemed entirely disproportionate to the mild-mannered young man before him, mistook the profound silence for submission. His eyes, cold and calculating, swept over the stunned faces, believing he had just reasserted his absolute dominance. He saw only a dusty farmhand, an uneducated bumpkin daring to question his authority, an insignificant cog in his vast, grinding machine. What he didn't know, what no one in that glass-encased mausoleum of power knew, was the true identity of the man who stood unflinching before him. The fluorescent lights hummed, indifferent, the air conditioning whirred, a mechanical whisper against the human drama unfolding. But in that moment, for those who witnessed it, the world had stopped, and in its stillness, the very fabric of Cole Agro Holdings began to fray. Ethan, barely flinching, the sting on his cheek a distant echo against the roaring clarity in his mind, slowly, deliberately lifted his gaze. His eyes, the color of rich, dark earth that had nurtured generations of his family's prosperity, held no anger, no fear, only a calm, unsettling clarity that unsettled Langford far more than any outburst could have. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are just the universe preparing us for who we are meant to become. This was not a defeat. It was a revelation, a brutal awakening. The cold burn on his cheek was a brand, etching a truth into his very being, a truth that would reshape not just his life, but the entire landscape of Cole Agro Holdings. It would never be the same. The seeds of revolution had just been planted with a CEO's open palm, a seed destined to sprout into a storm of reckoning. Hours earlier, the world had been a different place, bathed in the gentle, promising light of dawn. Ethan had been up before the sun, as was his custom, the ritual ingrained in him since childhood. The smell of damp earth and fresh hay clung to his worn denim work jacket, a scent far removed from the sterile corporate fragrance of Langford's office. He moved with a practiced grace among his small herd of cattle, his hands, calloused and strong, deftly checking a feeding trough, patting a placid flank, the warmth of the animal a comforting presence. The air was cool, carrying the distant promise of rain, a hope that always lingered in a farmer's heart, a prayer whispered on the wind. This small, unpretentious farm, nestled deep within the fertile valley, was his sanctuary, his proving ground, a testament to the honest labor that coursed through his veins. It was also, in a way, his camouflage, the unassuming exterior belying the depths of his true purpose. No one, looking at his faded cap and mud-splattered boots, would ever suspect his true station, the quiet power that flowed beneath the surface of his humble existence. He finished his chores, the rhythmic clanging of metal and soft lowing of the cows a familiar symphony, a peaceful counterpoint to the growing unrest in his soul. Inside the small, tidy farmhouse, the aroma of brewing coffee and frying bacon filled the air, a homely comfort he rarely allowed himself to fully savor. He sat at the old wooden table, scarred by generations of family meals, a tablet resting beside his plate, its crisp, modern lines a stark contrast to the rustic surroundings. This was where his other life, the one he had deliberately chosen to put aside, intersected with his chosen one. He scrolled through encrypted reports, the crisp pixels detailing the very corporate abuses he'd been hearing whispers about for months. Unfair contracts, predatory lending, farmers dismissed without cause, their livelihoods shattered. Workers treated with contempt, their dignity stripped away, their voices silenced. The words on the screen, cold and precise, painted a chilling picture of a system rotting from the inside out. A system that, unbeknownst to the perpetrators, was ultimately his to command. Cole Agro Holdings. The name had been his family's legacy, a century-old tapestry woven with generations of honest labor and a deep, abiding respect for the land. His grandfather, Silas Cole, had started it as a small collective, a promise to support local farmers, to build a community founded on mutual prosperity. His father, Arthur, a visionary in his own right, had expanded it into a regional powerhouse, integrating processing plants and distribution networks, always with the core philosophy of partnership, of shared success. But after Arthur's sudden, tragic death 3 years ago, a void that had never truly healed, when Ethan was thrust into the role of sole heir and controlling shareholder at just 22, he had deliberately stepped back from the day-to-day corporate operations. He trusted his father's old guard, appointed Victor Langford, a rising star with a polished veneer and a seemingly impeccable track record, as CEO, and retreated to the land. He sought to understand the company's foundation from the ground up, to feel the soil beneath his hands, to understand the sweat, the true cost of every bushel and every cut of meat. He wanted to ensure the integrity of his family's name, not just its bottom line, to preserve the soul of the enterprise. But the reports spoke of a betrayal of that very integrity, a slow, insidious corruption. The figures were grim, not just financially but ethically. Payouts to farmers were dwindling, yet corporate profits soared to unprecedented heights, a dark paradox. Employee morale was plummeting, a silent epidemic of despair. The complaints were increasing, escalating from hushed whispers to outright cries for help from the very communities his family had sworn to uplift, to protect. This wasn't just poor management, it was a perversion of purpose. He felt the weight of his father's dreams, his grandfather's vision, pressing down on him like a physical burden. How had he allowed this to happen? His initial retreat, born of a desire to understand, now felt like a dereliction of duty, a grave error that had allowed a predator to infest the heart of his family's legacy. The realization was a bitter pill, hardening his resolve. His decision crystallized as he watched the sun climb higher, painting the eastern sky in hues of orange and rose, a deceptive beauty. He couldn't act on rumors alone. He needed to see it, feel it, understand the full depth of the rot firsthand. He would go to the main processing and distribution facility, a gleaming monument of glass and steel his father had built, without revealing his identity. He would be just another farmhand, another face in the crowd, a silent observer in his own empire. The thought of exposing himself to the very abuses he sought to investigate filled him with a quiet dread, a chilling anticipation, but also a determined resolve, a steel forged in the fire of injustice. His father had always said, with the wisdom of generations in his eyes, "A good shepherd knows his flock not by their numbers, but by the health of each lamb." And Ethan intended to know his flock, to tend to the ailing, to cast out the wolves. The transition from the open, honest expanse of his farm to the shimmering, deceptive facade of the corporate facility was jarring, a visceral assault on his senses. Glass buildings, monuments to abstract ambition, pierced the cerulean sky, reflecting the indifferent clouds, mirroring the cold hearts within. A parade of luxury cars, silent and predatory, glided into the parking lot, their polished surfaces gleaming under the midday sun, a stark contrast to the dust-coated pickup truck Ethan drove, its engine rumbling a humble protest, a defiant growl against the sterile silence. Suits, sharp and expensive, strode confidently through automated doors, their faces impassive masks of power, their voices a low hum of ambition and unchecked authority. Ethan, dressed in the same worn denim and dusty boots he'd worn that morning, felt the weight of their disdain even before he stepped inside, a premonition of the scorn to come. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and something else, a faint, metallic tang of sterile ambition, a manufactured freshness that couldn't quite mask the underlying odor of industry and processed goods, a hidden stink of moral decay. He navigated the maze of gleaming corridors, a silent anomaly in a world of curated perfection, his presence a jarring note in the corporate symphony. Security guards, impeccably dressed and radiating an air of bored authority, barely glanced at his temporary visitor's badge, their eyes scanning him with a dismissive scoff. Their expressions, uniform in their contempt, seemed to silently articulate, "Another farm kid who doesn't know his place, probably lost, doesn't belong here." Whispers followed him like shadows, faint, insidious currents in the hushed efficiency of the hallways. He heard fragments, "Fresh off the tractor, probably lost, doesn't belong here." He passed an open office door where a woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a designer handbag laughed a little too loudly, her words cutting through the air. "Another farm kid who doesn't know his place." The laughter was like a physical blow, cold and dismissive. He said nothing, simply absorbed it all, the cold indifference, a physical chill that settled deep in his bones, confirming his worst suspicions. This was the outward manifestation of the internal rot he had read about, the tangible evidence of a company that had lost its way. The disdain for the very hands that fed the corporation was palpable, woven into the fabric of the building itself. From the way the security staff regarded him to the dismissive glances of the office workers, to the dismissive laughter of executives, he moved through various departments, his presence barely registered, a ghost in his own empire, a silent witness to its slow decline. The sleek lines, the polished chrome, the hushed efficiency, it all screamed progress, but a hollow progress, built on a foundation that felt increasingly unstable, built on the backs of those they disdained. He saw the flicker of recognition in the eyes of a few older employees, men and women who remembered his father, who knew the true meaning of the Cole name, but they averted their gazes quickly, a silent pact of fear, a chilling testament to Langford's reign. The walls felt too clean, the smiles too forced, the silence too heavy, burdened by unspoken truths. It was a gilded cage for both those who worked within it and unknowingly for the one who owned it, a prison of their own making. The disconnect between the corporate veneer and the rough-hewn reality of agriculture, the source of its very existence, was stark and chilling. The air grew heavier with each step, thick with the unspoken despair of the silenced. The first signs of corruption weren't loud, dramatic pronouncements or grand betrayals. They were insidious, a slow, creeping decay that permeated every interaction, every transaction like a silent plague. Ethan, using his anonymity as a shield, moved through the facility's administrative wings and then into the cavernous, humming processing areas, observing. He saw farmers, their faces etched with worry lines deepened by years of sun and toil, waiting for hours in uncomfortable chairs, their patience worn thin, only to be dismissed with a wave of a hand by junior executives barely old enough to shave. He heard snippets of conversations, brutal in their casual cruelty. "Your yield was substandard, new contract terms, take it or leave it. We're reducing prices, market volatility, you understand." The euphemisms were thin veils over transparent exploitation, cynical excuses for naked greed. He witnessed a veteran farmer, a man whose hands spoke of 50 harvests, whose very essence was tied to the land, pleading for an explanation for a sudden, inexplicable deduction from his payment. A young, slick-haired manager, barely out of college, cut him off with a patronizing smile, his eyes devoid of empathy. "Look, Mr. Jensen, the algorithm doesn't lie. Your corn just didn't meet our quality metrics this quarter. Next time, try harder." The manager tapped on his tablet, utterly disconnected from the despair he inflicted, from the lives he casually crushed. Ethan felt a slow burn ignite within him, a molten core of anger. The company his family built, founded on principles of mutual respect and partnership, was now using opaque metrics and digital smoke screens to siphon off the livelihoods of honest people, to steal from those who labored beneath the sun. Later in the break room, a space meant for respite but now permeated by fear, he heard workers spoken to with contempt that bordered on abuse. A supervisor, a burly man with a permanent scowl etched on his face, yelled at a line worker for a minor mistake, threatening to dock his pay, to cut into the already meager earnings that barely sustained his family. "You think we pay you to stand around dreaming, Rodriguez? Get back to work or there are a dozen others ready to take your place, dirt cheap." The worker, a young man with tired eyes and slumping shoulders, simply nodded, defeated, his spirit crushed. The air in the break room, thick with the smell of stale coffee and desperation, felt heavy, suffocating, a palpable weight of oppression. The dignity of labor was being systematically stripped away, replaced by a cold, calculating hierarchy of power. This wasn't just corporate efficiency. It was active dehumanization, a deliberate strategy to break the will of the workforce. The system, once a beacon of support, had become a predator, its hunger insatiable, devouring the very people it was designed to serve. He felt the weight of his family's legacy, not as a source of pride but as a burden of complicity. He had allowed this to happen. His silence, his retreat, had paved the way for this calculated cruelty. His fists clenched, the knuckles white beneath the tan skin, a silent vow forming. He understood now. This wasn't merely mismanagement. It was deliberate, a cold, calculated strategy to maximize profit at the expense of human worth, a corruption that ran deeper than he had dared to imagine. The dehumanization continued, a steady, insidious drumbeat of dismissals and veiled threats, a constant reminder of the precariousness of their existence. It was in the hushed, fearful conversations between workers, their voices barely audible, in the way they avoided eye contact with management, their gazes cast down, in the way their shoulders hunched under the invisible weight of their precarious employment, their dreams slowly suffocating. Ethan watched, a silent observer, feeling the cold anger solidify within him, transforming into a chilling resolve. He saw a woman, her face streaked with tears, clutching a termination notice like a death warrant, her pleas falling on deaf ears, ignored by the unfeeling machine. He saw a young man, barely out of school, his idealism crushed under the boot of an indifferent supervisor, his future abruptly curtailed. Each incident chipped away at the last vestiges of his hope that this was simply a misunderstanding, a few bad apples. No, this was systemic, a rot that had permeated the very core of Cole Agro Holdings. It was amidst this suffocating atmosphere, this pervasive despair, that a small, unexpected gesture of kindness broke through the icy indifference, a flicker of light in the deepening gloom. A young man, probably no older than 20, with nervous eyes that darted around like trapped birds and a shock of sandy brown hair perpetually falling across his forehead, was diligently wiping down a table in the employee break room. He seemed timid, easily startled by even the softest noise, but there was an innate decency in his movements, a quiet earnestness that set him apart. He noticed Ethan, standing alone, observing, his clothes clearly marking him as an outsider, perhaps a new hire, confused and a little lost in the labyrinthine corporate world. The young man hesitated, his eyes betraying a hint of apprehension. Then, gathering his courage, he approached cautiously, a plastic cup of water held out in his hand, a small offering in a desolate landscape. "Here," he murmured, his voice soft, almost a whisper as if afraid of drawing attention, "you look like you've been standing a while. It gets hot in here, even with the AC." He offered a fleeting, almost apologetic smile. Ethan took the water, his fingers brushing the cool plastic, the simple contact a startling warmth in the cold environment. The simple act felt like a lifeline in the churning sea of indifference, a reaffirmation of basic human compassion. "Thanks," Ethan said, his voice a low rumble, unpracticed in recent polite exchanges, betraying his own discomfort with the situation. The young man, Noah, offered a small, hesitant smile, a glimmer of vulnerability. He glanced around as if fearful of being overheard before leaning in slightly, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "They treat us like dirt here," he confided, his eyes wide with a quiet desperation, reflecting a profound sense of injustice. "Like we're just numbers on a spreadsheet. My name's Noah, by the way. What's yours?" "Ethan," he replied, keeping his voice even, carefully masking the tempest brewing within him. He felt a pang of connection, a shared humanity in the sterile, uncaring environment. Noah was a mirror of all the vulnerable souls his family's company was meant to protect, a living embodiment of the very values Langford's regime had trampled. He represented the very heart of the problem and the reason Ethan had come, the human cost of unbridled greed. Noah began to describe the impossible quotas, the arbitrary cuts to benefits, the constant threat of being replaced by cheaper labor, the daily indignities that slowly chipped away at their spirit. He spoke of his younger sister, who relied on his meager earnings, of his dreams of going to trade school, dreams slowly being suffocated by the daily grind, by the crushing weight of systemic oppression. His story wasn't unique. It was the collective lament of the rural working class, caught in the gears of corporate greed, their lives reduced to mere statistics. The water felt cool in Ethan's hand, a stark contrast to the fire that was starting to burn within his chest, fueled by Noah's quiet despair and the profound injustice he represented. This was not just about profit. It was about souls, about futures, about the very dignity of hard work, a sacred covenant broken. The quiet fire simmering within Ethan reached a slow boil, threatening to erupt. He couldn't stand by and simply watch the corporate machine devour Noah and countless others, spitting them out once their utility was exhausted. He had to intervene, at least in a small way, to test the waters, to gauge the true depths of Victor Langford's disregard and the entrenched nature of his corruption. His moment came when he overheard a manager openly discussing the arbitrary dismissal of a small supplier, a family farm that had been with Cole Agro Holdings for decades, a relationship built on trust and loyalty. The reason given was a fabricated, logistical inefficiency, a transparent lie designed to justify a predatory decision. "But they've always delivered on time," Ethan calmly interjected, stepping forward from the shadows of his observation. His voice, though low, carried a surprising weight, an unexpected authority that cut through the casual cruelty of the conversation, drawing immediate attention. He stood, a silent monolith in his worn clothes, daring to question the established order, a farmhand challenging the corporate titans. "And their produce is consistently top tier. I've seen their fields. What's the real reason?" The manager, a slick individual named Brenda with a perfectly sculpted bob and eyes as cold as polished steel, turned, her face a mask of annoyance. She looked him up and down, a sneer forming on her lips, dripping with condescension. "Who are you? What business is it of yours, farm boy? We don't explain corporate decisions to every grunt who wanders in. Know your place." Her words were meant to wound, to dismiss, to put him in his perceived place. Before Ethan could respond, a sudden, booming voice, laced with impatient authority, cut through the tension, silencing all other murmurs. "What in God's name is going on here, Brenda?" Victor Langford strode into the crowded reception area, his expensive suit impeccable, tailored to perfection, his presence radiating an aura of entitled authority, a king surveying his petty fiefdom. His eyes, sharp and dismissive, swept over the gathered employees, finally landing on Ethan, whose quiet defiance had drawn Brenda's ire and disrupted the corporate serenity. Langford's face contorted in disgust, a visceral reaction to what he perceived as an affront to his carefully curated world. And who is this vagrant? His gaze, a physical weight, raked over Ethan's dusty boots, his worn jeans, his simple work shirt, seeing everything he despised about uneducated rural labor embodied in this one figure, anathema to his polished facade. The murmuring crowd parted, creating a small, tense arena, a stage for Langford's performance. This was a spectacle, and Langford reveled in it, eager to make an example. Ethan held his ground, his posture unwavering, a quiet defiance radiating from him. "I'm merely asking for an explanation for unfair practices, Mr. Langford. Dismissing loyal partners for fabricated reasons is detrimental to the company's integrity, to its very soul." Langford's laugh was a harsh, braying sound devoid of humor, laced with contempt. He stepped closer, invading Ethan's personal space, his eyes blazing with a calculated fury. "Integrity? You dare speak of integrity to me, boy? Look at yourself. Your clothes reek of manure, your boots are caked in mud. What could a man like you possibly know about corporate integrity, about running an empire? Authority comes from titles, from appearances, from power, not from smelling like a barn." He gestured wildly at Ethan's attire, his voice rising, thick with contempt, growing louder with each word. "You think you can just waltz in here, fresh from your tractor, and question my decisions? My decisions, young man, are what make this company profitable. Your kind just exists to fuel it, to be exploited for our benefit." The crowd shifted nervously, sensing the escalating fury of their CEO, the raw, unbridled rage emanating from him. Some averted their eyes, embarrassed by the spectacle. Others, like Noah, who had been watching from a distance, looked terrified, shrinking back into the shadows, fearing for Ethan. Langford's face was now a mask of pure rage, his control slipping, his carefully constructed facade cracking under the pressure. He saw an opportunity to make an example, to assert his dominance over the unwashed masses he so openly despised, to crush any burgeoning dissent. He leaned in, his voice a venomous hiss. "You want to know your place, boy? Let me show you your place." And then, in a swift, impulsive arc, his hand swung out. The sharp, cracking sound of flesh on flesh echoed through the stunned silence, reverberating through the opulent reception. Victor Langford slapped Ethan Cole across the face, a public humiliation meant to crush his spirit, to remind everyone who truly held power, to solidify his reign of fear. Gasps ripped through the onlookers, a collective moan of shock. The red imprint bloomed on Ethan's cheek, a scarlet badge of defiance against his pale skin. His hat finally tumbled to the polished floor, landing silently, a symbol of the moment's profound violence. But Ethan did not retaliate. He did not flinch, did not cry out, did not even blink. Only silence. A profound, terrifying silence, heavier and more dangerous than any roar. His eyes, those deep, knowing eyes, met Langford's, and for a fleeting moment, a sliver of unease, a cold premonition, flickered in the CEO's triumphant gaze, a hint of the storm to come. The silence after the slap stretched, taut and suffocating, thick with unspoken outrage and raw fear. It held the collective breath of the room, the shock, the outrage, the palpable terror that had just descended. Victor Langford, basking in the perceived victory of his display, finally lowered his hand, a smug satisfaction settling on his features, believing he had delivered a crushing blow. "Now," he sneered, his voice dripping with condescension, "perhaps you understand how things work here. This is not a discussion, it is an order, and you, my dirty friend, are irrelevant." He gestured to two burly security guards who had materialized from the periphery, their faces impassive, their movements swift. "Get this nuisance out of my building, and make sure he understands he's never to step foot in a Cole Agro facility again. If he even tries, I'll have him arrested for trespassing. This is a private property." His words were a final, vicious pronouncement meant to seal Ethan's fate. The guards, their faces like stone, moved towards Ethan, their hands reaching for his arms. As they reached him, Ethan calmly, deliberately, bent down and picked up his hat. He brushed off a speck of dust from the brim, his movements slow and measured, as if time itself had slowed down for him, every action imbued with a quiet dignity. His eyes remained locked on Langford's, unwavering, unblinking, betraying nothing of the inferno raging within. There was no anger there, no outward sign of the searing humiliation he had just endured, only a profound, almost chilling calm. It was the calm of a deep ocean, hiding immense, destructive power beneath a placid surface, a stillness that was far more menacing than any storm. Phones, held secretly, glinted in the periphery, tiny eyes recording the entire incident, the raw, undiluted truth of Langford's tyranny. Someone, a brave soul hidden in the crowd, had already uploaded the clip internally, a ripple of defiance moving through the company's private network, silently undermining Langford's perceived victory. "Understood," Ethan said, his voice quiet but resonant, carrying through the heavy air, a whisper that seemed to echo with a hidden promise. His words weren't a plea or a protest, but a statement of simple fact, a declaration cloaked in a whisper. He allowed the guards to escort him, walking with a steady, unhurried pace, his head held high, his gaze unwavering. He walked past Noah, whose face was a mixture of horror and pity, his eyes wide with concern, and gave him the barest, almost imperceptible nod. It was a silent acknowledgement, a promise Noah couldn't possibly comprehend in that moment, but one that would soon define his future. He stepped out of the gleaming glass building and into the harsh afternoon sun, the stark contrast of the corporate facade and his own humble truck, a powerful metaphor for the chasm he intended to bridge, the two worlds he was about to collide. The corporate scent of manufactured freshness was replaced by the honest smell of diesel and asphalt, the earthy scent of his true domain. He drove away. The image of Langford's sneering face burned into his memory, the sting on his cheek, a physical reminder of the monumental task ahead, a constant spur to his burgeoning resolve. The world believed him defeated, expelled, irrelevant. They couldn't have been more wrong. That night back on his quiet farm, under the vast, indifferent expanse of the star-flecked sky, Ethan Cole did not seek solace in anger or revenge. The raw humiliation burned, but it was a cold fire, hardening his resolve rather than igniting a furious blaze. He sought justice methodically, with the same patient precision he applied to cultivating his fields. He brewed a strong pot of coffee, the bitter aroma filling his small kitchen, a comforting anchor in the storm of his thoughts. Then, with the same quiet discipline he applied to working his fields, to nurturing life from the soil, he made a series of phone calls. His voice, calm and steady, belied the seismic events of the day, speaking with an authority that had been dormant for too long. Lawyers were contacted, their names whispered in hushed tones across secure lines, the finest legal minds he knew. Documents, hundreds of pages thick, detailing his father's will, the intricate web of trusts and holdings, the ironclad evidence of his majority shares of Cole Agro Holdings, were retrieved from secure vaults, brought out of the shadows. No threats were issued, no vows of immediate vengeful retribution were made, only instructions, precise, legal, irrevocable. The process had begun. The silent air was silent no more. The harvest of consequences was about to commence, and Victor Langford, in his blindness and arrogance, had just sown its most potent seed. The corporate machine would soon learn that the land, insulted and abused, had a memory and a formidable will of its own. Ethan spent the next few days in a whirlwind of discreet activity. His farmhouse, usually a sanctuary of solitude, became a command center. Encrypted video calls replaced the rhythm of farm chores. Financial analysts, legal teams, and corporate strategists, all bound by strict non-disclosure agreements, worked tirelessly under his direction. They unearthed the full extent of Langford's reign of greed, shell corporations siphoning off profits, manipulated market reports, illegal wage suppression, and a pattern of calculated intimidation. They discovered a hidden network of offshore accounts, a brazen attempt to funnel Cole Agro's substantial profits into Langford's personal coffers, bypassing shareholders and devastating local communities. The scope of the betrayal was even more staggering than Ethan had initially feared. Langford wasn't just neglecting the company's integrity. He was actively dismantling it for personal gain, selling off its soul piece by piece. He learned of an impending deal, a critical merger Langford was pushing through, poised to dilute the company's remaining ethical protections and consolidate even more power in his hands. It was a hostile maneuver, disguised as strategic growth, designed to push out smaller, independent farmers who represented the last vestiges of Silas Cole's original vision. This deal, if it went through, would be the final nail in the coffin of Cole Agro's legacy. A deadline loomed, a major board vote scheduled for the end of the week. Ethan knew he had to act swiftly, decisively, before his family's century-old dream became irretrievably lost, swallowed whole by Langford's ambition. The weight of his family's legacy, the duty to protect his inheritance, now felt like a crushing burden, yet it fueled a fire within him, a righteous anger. He thought of his father, Arthur, a man who saw the land not just as a source of wealth but as a living entity deserving of respect, and his grandfather, Silas, whose vision of a farmer-first collective was now a distant, mocking echo. He couldn't let their work be undone. He would honor their legacy. Ignorance often is a cloak of invincibility until the first thread unravels. For Victor Langford, the days following the incident were filled with an intoxicating sense of triumph, a megalomaniac's delusion of unassailable power. He saw no unraveling threads, only the tightening grip of his authority. The internal clip of the slap, initially a moment of potential crisis, had, in his warped perception, become a badge of honor, proof of his ruthlessness. He had asserted dominance, put a peasant in his place, and silenced any whispers of dissent. The buzz around the office, the hushed whispers, he interpreted as fear and respect, a testament to his iron will. His arrogance, already towering, reached new, dizzying heights, blinding him to the gathering storm. He sat in the opulent boardroom the next morning, the polished mahogany table reflecting his confident smile, a grotesque caricature of a king. Executives, carefully selected for their loyalty and lack of backbone, sat around him, nodding deferentially as he recounted the incident with a theatrical flourish, embellishing the details to cast himself as the strong leader. He described the disrespectful farm boy as a belligerent troublemaker who had tried to disrupt company operations, a saboteur deserving of public shaming. Some people, he declared, leaning back in his expensive leather chair, a smirk playing on his lips, just don't understand the chain of command. They confuse their dirty hands with genuine worth. This company thrives on order, on discipline, not on the emotional whims of uneducated labor. We prune the weak to strengthen the tree. A ripple of sycophantic laughter went around the table, a chorus of subservience. Then, with a casual flick of his wrist, imbued with a fresh surge of power, he made another impulsive decision, sealing his own doom. And that young man, he said, recalling Noah's timid face, the one who offered water to our friend yesterday, the one who clearly sympathizes with such insolence. We don't need that kind of softness in our ranks. He showed disrespect to the company by enabling an agitator. Let him go, effective immediately, and make sure his severance is minimal. A collective intake of breath around the table, but no one dared to challenge him, their fear overriding any moral qualms. Noah was a casualty, a lesson for anyone considering dissent, a warning etched in their minds. Langford savored the silence, mistaking it for complete assent. Langford looked out the panoramic windows at the city skyline, a king surveying his domain, convinced of his unshakable reign. Farm boys don't own corporations, he scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension, a sneer twisting his lips. They plant seeds, we harvest the profits. That's the natural order of things. Always has been, always will be. His confidence peaked, inflated by the echoing silence of his fearful subordinates, by the lack of any discernible challenge. He truly believed he was untouchable, the unquestioned master of Cole Agro Holdings, his power absolute. He was convinced he had secured his position, solidified his power, by crushing a symbol of what he considered to be beneath him. The image of the silent, dirt-smeared young man, humbled by his palm, replayed in his mind, fueling his megalomania. He felt invincible, utterly unaware that the seeds of his own destruction had been planted by his very own hand, watered by his own unchecked arrogance, and were now about to sprout. The audience, if they existed in this corporate drama, would hate him now. Hate him for his cruelty, his blindness, his absolute certainty in his own unassailable power. The fall would be all the more satisfying. He was a man utterly unprepared for the silent force that was about to bring his meticulously constructed world crashing down. Meanwhile, the ripple effect of the infamous slap began to take its toll, far beyond Langford's insulated boardroom. The internal clip, initially a whisper, had become a roar. It wasn't just Langford's loyalists who had seen it. It had spread like wildfire through the company's lower ranks, then spilled out onto local social media. News outlets picked up on the story of the farmer humiliated by CEO, framing it as a David and Goliath battle, a symbol of corporate arrogance versus the honest dignity of labor. Calls for boycotts of Cole Agro products, already simmering due to reports of unfair practices, began to intensify. The company's stock, once a steady climb, showed its first noticeable dip in years. Ethan, monitoring these developments from his farm, saw the opportunity. This was the quantifiable escalation he needed, a public condemnation that weakened Langford's position, making his eventual move undeniable. But it wasn't just external pressure. The quiet rumblings of dissent within the company were growing louder. Reports flooded in from his anonymous contacts, a mass exodus of mid-level managers who refused to condone Langford's ethics, a palpable fear spreading among the workforce, an unprecedented number of farmers threatening to pull their contracts, even if it meant financial hardship. The company was teetering on the brink of a full-blown crisis, not just of reputation, but of operational stability. He also received a call from an old family friend, a retired judge named Elias Vance, who had served on the Cole Agro board for decades and had been a mentor to Arthur Cole. Vance, his voice grave, confirmed Ethan's worst fears. Langford was not just running the company, he was systematically looting it, leveraging its assets for personal gain, and ignoring critical maintenance and environmental regulations to cut costs. "He's a cancer, Ethan," Vance had said, his voice raw with grief. "Your father built this company with integrity. Langford is tearing it apart from the inside out. He's pushing through a vote this Friday to secure a massive loan, ostensibly for expansion, but a significant portion is earmarked for a phantom project that will line his own pockets. If that goes through, Cole Agro Holdings will be legally bound to a scheme that could bankrupt it." The revelation landed like a hammer blow. This wasn't just about restoring dignity. It was about saving the company from utter ruin, protecting the very land his family had cherished for generations. The deadline was imminent, the risk of financial ruin and legacy loss very real. He knew what he had to do. His legal team had meticulously prepared the documents, the incontrovertible proof of his ownership and Langford's malfeasance. The stage was set. Ethan finalized the last details of the audacious plan with his legal counsel. He would make his move at the emergency board meeting called to approve Langford's devastating loan proposal. It was the only way to expose the truth and reclaim his family's company. This was not merely a corporate takeover. It was an act of surgical justice, a reclamation of a soul. The next day dawned with an unsettling quiet, a premonition in the air, thick with unspoken tensions. An emergency board meeting had been called, an unusual occurrence that sent ripples of apprehension through the executive ranks. The executives arrived, a mix of apprehension and curiosity on their faces, their whispers circulating like hushed rumors. Had there been a major market crash, a hostile takeover bid, none of them could fathom the true nature of the impending tremor that was about to shake their world. The boardroom, usually a stage for Victor Langford's grand pronouncements, felt different, charged with an unidentifiable energy, a subtle shift in the air. The polished mahogany table gleamed under the soft lights, reflecting the nervous faces gathered around it, awaiting the storm. Victor Langford, though, walked in with his usual swagger, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips, oblivious to the undercurrents. He was convinced this meeting was merely a formality, a rubber stamp for his new, stricter policies, to stamp out any lingering dissent and solidify his final, devastating financial maneuver. He'd barely settled into his chair at the head of the polished mahogany table, radiating an arrogant confidence, when the doors opened again. And then Ethan Cole walked in. He wore the same clothes from the day before, the faded denim, the sturdy work shirt, the slightly scuffed but now impeccably clean boots. His hat, resting firmly on his head, gave him an air of quiet dignity, a humble strength that filled the opulent room. His presence was a stark, jarring anomaly in the room filled with crisp suits and designer dresses, a living antithesis to their manufactured perfection. A collective gasp, softer this time but far more profound than the one from the day before, ripped through the room, a wave of stunned realization. Langford's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of bewildered fury, then dawning horror. "What is the meaning of this?" he snarled, half rising from his chair, his voice sharp, cutting through the silence. "Who let this insolent farmhand back into my building? Security." But before he could utter another word, a grave, elderly man, Elias Vance, the company's chief counsel and a longtime confidant of Ethan's late father, stepped forward. His voice, usually dry and procedural, resonated with an undeniable authority that commanded immediate attention, silencing Langford. "Mr. Langford, please resume your seat. Your outburst is inappropriate. Mr. Cole is here at my invitation on behalf of the Cole Family Trust. Ladies and gentlemen," he addressed the stunned board, his gaze sweeping across their faces, a profound gravity in his eyes. "It is with the utmost gravity and a heavy heart that I introduce you to Mr. Ethan Cole." He paused, allowing the words to hang in the air, thick with unspoken meaning, with the weight of destiny. Then his voice dropped to a level of profound respect, a respect that stripped Victor Langford of all his self-proclaimed power, reducing him to a mere pretender. "Mr. Ethan Cole, your majority owner, and the acting chairman of the board of directors of Cole Agro Holdings. He is here to exercise his undeniable authority and to address the grave concerns regarding the direction of this company." The words struck Victor Langford like a physical blow, a sudden, brutal impact. The color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly, ashen gray. His jaw went slack, his eyes wide with dawning horror, the world tilting on its axis beneath his feet. The silent farm boy, the vagrant, the nuisance he had publicly humiliated, was the very foundation upon which his empire stood. The implications crashed down on him with the force of a tidal wave, overwhelming his carefully constructed delusions of grandeur. He had not only slapped the owner, he had systematically undermined the company he now commanded. The sheer monumental idiocy of his actions, his unchecked arrogance, now stared him in the face. His power, his status, his very career, all of it depended on the silent, unassuming man standing before him, the man he had so contemptuously dismissed. Slowly, agonizingly, Victor Langford pushed himself out of his chair, his movements stiff, unnatural. His knees felt weak, his blood cold, a chilling realization washing over him. He looked at Ethan, truly looked at him, and saw not a farmhand, but the quiet strength of the land, the unyielding power of true ownership, generations of integrity embodied in one calm gaze. Shame, cold and sharp, pierced through his arrogance, carving a wound into his psyche. He stood, trembling slightly, his eyes still fixed on Ethan's calm, unwavering gaze, desperate for a sign for mercy. Then, in a gesture born of absolute terror and complete capitulation, Victor Langford, the arrogant, image-obsessed CEO, lowered his head. He bowed, publicly, completely, a profound, reverential bow before the young farm boy he had so viciously despised and humiliated. The silence in the boardroom was heavier than the slap had ever been, imbued now with the crushing weight of shattered hubris and absolute power reversal. It was the sound of an empire reclaiming its soul, a silent scream of retribution. The bow was more than a surrender. It was a visible crumbling of the corporate facade that Victor Langford had so meticulously constructed, a public shattering of his carefully cultivated image. The sound of his ego disintegrating echoed through the stunned silence of the boardroom, more impactful than any spoken word, a visceral representation of his utter defeat. Ethan, watching the man who had sought to demean him now bow in public obeisance, felt no triumph, no surge of vengeful satisfaction, only a profound sense of weary resolution. This was not revenge, not a petty act of personal retribution. It was the restoration of balance, the reassertion of principles that had been trampled underfoot. Arthur Vance, his voice cutting through the tension, broke the heavy silence. As of this moment, Mr. Langford's tenure as CEO of Cole Agro Holdings is terminated, effective immediately. Furthermore, a forensic audit of all his financial dealings with the company is underway, and any illegally obtained assets will be pursued through all available legal channels. Mr. Cole will be overseeing the transition and the necessary restructuring. Langford remained bowed for a long, agonizing moment, his posture a testament to his broken spirit, his world irrevocably shattered. When he finally straightened, his face was a mask of utter defeat, his eyes glazed over, devoid of their former cruel fire. He turned, a ghost of his former self, and shuffled out of the boardroom, his expensive suit now seeming to hang loose on his deflated frame, his swagger utterly obliterated. No one spoke as he left, no one dared to meet his eye. The air, once thick with his arrogance, now held a strange, new quiet, a space for something better to grow, for integrity to be replanted. Ethan stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the remaining board members, his presence commanding attention despite his quiet demeanor. His voice, though still quiet, was imbued with a steely resolve, resonating with a newfound authority. The past few years, he began, his voice devoid of anger, only a quiet determination. Cole Agro Holdings has strayed catastrophically from its core values. My family built this company on trust, fairness, and a deep respect for the land and the people who work it. We are not just about profit. We are about partnership, about community, about stewardship. That era of exploitation and disregard ends today. It ends now and irrevocably. His first executive actions were decisive and immediate, a clear blueprint for the future. Investigations will be launched into all contract manipulations and labor practices. Any employee found to have engaged in unethical or illegal behavior will be removed, regardless of their position. Policies will be reformed to ensure fair pricing for our farmers, dignified treatment for our workers, and transparency across all operations. We will rebuild the trust that has been eroded, brick by painstaking brick, and the upcoming merger, championed by Mr. Langford, is immediately halted, pending a full ethical review. Later that day, from the quiet solitude of his revitalized office, Ethan made a call to Noah. The young man answered, his voice tentative, expecting the worst, his future hanging in the balance. "Noah," Ethan said, his voice kind, firm, and reassuring, "this is Ethan Cole. I believe you were unjustly terminated yesterday, and your story played a significant part in confirming the rot that had set in here." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line, a choked gasp of disbelief. "Your job is reinstated, and more than that, your voice and the voices of all our workers will be heard. We're building a new internal advocacy committee, a direct channel to management, and I want you to be part of it. The company needs people like you, with integrity and a true understanding of what it means to work the land, to truly build something." Noah's stunned gratitude was palpable, a small but significant victory in the larger battle for justice, a testament to the power of a single act of kindness. In the weeks and months that followed, the changes rippled through Cole Agro Holdings like a cleansing tide, washing away years of accumulated grime and corruption. The investigations were thorough, exposing a vast network of corruption that extended far beyond Langford, implicating several key executives who were swiftly dismissed. New contracts were drafted, fair and transparent, restoring the trust of the farmers who had been so cruelly exploited, their livelihoods now secure. Worker benefits were reinstated, training programs were launched, and a new culture of respect and mutual collaboration began to take root, replacing the oppressive atmosphere of fear. Ethan, no longer the silent heir but the active chairman, oversaw it all with the same quiet determination he brought to his fields. He worked tirelessly, often from his farmhouse, connected digitally, but also visited the facilities regularly, no longer disguised but still dressed simply, speaking directly to farmers and workers, listening more than he spoke, his ears always open to the heartbeat of the land and its people. He didn't crave the spotlight. He craved justice, balance, and the restoration of his family's legacy, the soul of Cole Agro Holdings. He remembered a quiet conversation with his grandfather, Silas, years ago, watching the sun set over their endless fields, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and promise. "Ethan," Silas had said, his voice raspy with age, his eyes wise with generations of experience, "the land provides, but it also demands respect. Anyone who forgets that, anyone who thinks they can conquer it with greed, with contempt, will eventually be brought to their knees. The land always wins, son." Now standing on the rich, dark earth of his own farm, looking out at the burgeoning crops, at the healthy herds, Ethan understood the true weight of those words, their profound, undeniable truth. The corporate towers, the gleaming glass and cold steel, seemed small and fragile against the vast, enduring power of the land. His own hands, still rough from honest labor, felt the pulse of life beneath the soil, a connection deeper than any spreadsheet. He had seen the cycle complete, the hubris, the fall, and the painful, necessary rebirth. Power that insults the land, Ethan mused to himself, the words echoing his grandfather's wisdom, a quiet affirmation of his purpose, will always kneel to it, for the land is the true master. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, a fitting end to a tumultuous chapter, and a hopeful beginning for a new one, where the roots of integrity ran deep and true, nourished by the soil, guided by the silent heir who had found his voice, and in doing so, had reclaimed an empire. He wasn't just building a company, he was cultivating a legacy, a testament to resilience, integrity, and the enduring power of the land. The harvest of justice was indeed bountiful, and so their destiny was forged, a new legacy built from the ashes of the old. Their story now belongs to time, but its power only grows if shared. True power doesn't come from titles or appearances, but from the quiet strength of integrity rooted in the land. But as one man breaks the system, another is trapped by it. What does it truly mean to inherit a legacy, and at what cost do we protect it? If this journey marked your soul, leave a like and subscribe. For the best stories are those that refuse to die in silence, echoing through the ages.